Welcome to Smooth Stones, a podcast for moms raising children on earth while remembering their babies in heaven. Come on in and let's chat. I'm Amy Watson, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. I am so excited to have my client on today. Whitney was brave enough to share her story and give us kind of a picture of what it's like being in coaching and also just what it's like moving forward and moving through your grief and all the tools that she learned and was able to use as we worked together. It's been almost a year since we started working together, so I thought it was a great time to give us all a vision. A lot of times I will talk to people about looking forward and imagining your future, and it can be hard. And so I think that we have a beautiful opportunity here for you to really see one person's story and their experience. And it doesn't mean that now she's in that quote unquote after and that life is perfect. Life is still going to be hard half the time. We still have challenges. Grief is still going to crop up for us. But I think that she does a great job of explaining the tools that she uses and that we used in coaching and just telling her story, which is a really, really beautiful one. I am so grateful to her for being brave. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I want to welcome my client, Whitney, here with us today. Whitney, we started working together almost exactly a year ago. Can you believe that?
I can't believe it. I was wondering, how long ago did I even start? That is crazy.
Yes. Before we dive in to today's topic, which is just talking to you about, what it's been like this year and what you've been through and kind of taking us through your journey, I always like to start the podcast letting people tell a story about their baby's life. And we often talk about our baby's deaths when we've lost them, but you have a sweet little boy. And I'd love if you'd share just a little bit about him, your pregnancy, and any lessons that he's taught you.
My son's name is Jimmy, and I have three older kids that are older than him. And when my youngest at the time was around, I think he was around 3, which would have been like the largest age gap. I just had felt like I wanted one more baby. I wanted another baby. And so I got pregnant and actually kind of like had talked to a really good friend of mine, and we sort of like convinced each other that we could do one more baby. Like she sort of wanted another baby too. Anyway, we ended up both getting pregnant at the same time, but I got pregnant with him and everything looked good at my 8-week appointment and my 12-week appointment. I got to see his cute little body on the ultrasound. When I went in for my 16-week appointment, and this was in March, it was just right at the beginning of the pandemic. And when I went in, there was no heartbeat. The doctor couldn't find a heartbeat with just what is that tool called?
The Doppler.
The Doppler, yeah, with the Doppler. And he said, let's just go check things out on the ultrasound. And I was like, I don't know. In my mind, I was like, it could be fine.
Yeah.
It's probably fine.
Yep.
It's probably fine. But when we went in, and got on the ultrasound, he wasn't moving and there was no heartbeat. And I was, of course, devastated. It was so sad. So I didn't carry him for very long, but I was very excited when I found out I was pregnant with him, and my kids were super excited. They had been wanting another sibling for a long time. They were very excited. And
is there any little memory from the time when you did have him with you that you kind of like to think about, even like cravings or, all those things we don't really get to talk about with our babies we lost?
You know what? Actually, I do remember a craving. That's funny that you say that. I craved sour candy,
Mm,
which I had never craved with any other siblings, or with any of my other kids, but I do remember sending my husband out to get like, I think he brought me back like Sour Patch Kids and maybe some like tropical Starbursts or something like, which normally I'm totally a chocolate lover, so it was a weird craving. So I do remember that.
yeah.
Um,
No, that's perfect. That's so cute. That's how I knew with my boys, my rainbow boys. I didn't want ice cream. And I was like,
yeah,
this is weird. Like you're pregnant
yeah,
and you don't want ice cream.
yeah,
I don't know. Okay.
yeah. That was weird.
You talked about how excited you were and then how devastated you were. And if it's okay, can you take us back to a year ago when we started working together? I was looking back in our notes and maybe just it will bring you back to that time, but you were talking about there was a party coming up for people in your church and they were doing a party for all the 2020 babies. It was kind of a big deal because you had a baby, but he wasn't with you. So,
Yeah.
can you just tell us kind of like emotionally, mentally, where were you at that time?
Yeah, I was not in a, I think I was in maybe a normal spot, but I was in the most pain that I've ever experienced before in my life. Everything was painful. Everything seemed to be a reminder of the loss. And I was it so he passed at the end of March, and here it is the end of August. It sounds like is when I started coaching. And so I think I was at a point that I was like, why am I still so sad? Why is everything making me, I don't want to feel this anymore, is like I don't want to feel, I think I had a lot of resistance to allowing the pain. And so, yes, that I do remember that party. There were a lot of my circle of friends had babies that year. Like, I think maybe like 15 babies
Wow.
in my church group of friends had been born that year. And yeah, they were having a get together to nobody had seen each other in a while because of COVID, and they wanted to do like an outdoor, I don't know, party, and I wasn't invited.
Oh,
And I remember feeling like I still had a baby. And just because he's not alive doesn't mean he wasn't a baby born in this year, and he still matters, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I'm thinking that's how I
yeah.
felt. But I was just very depressed. I remember feeling very lonely in the grief, like wanting other people to understand how incredibly difficult it was. And it felt like because he wasn't a full-term baby, it felt like people maybe didn't think it was as big of a deal as it felt to me. I was in a lot of other people's heads a lot, worrying about what other people thought, and feeling really lonely, wanting other people to understand how painful and hard it was.
Yes. So again, I went back a little bit in our notes and just so everybody knows, Whitney said it's okay to share, but some of the feelings you told me or how you were doing emotionally, you said the grief was crushing. You
Yes.
felt hopeless. It was agonizing and it was torture.
Yes. I remember feeling like, I think I had told you, it felt like grief was trying to kill me. It felt like it was my enemy. It kept popping up when I didn't want it to. It would come unexpectedly and catch me off guard. I was just so miserable. I think it was just so incredibly painful. It was really, really hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. And I think it's so brave of you to reach out for help, like in that kind of a dark place. And I was just thinking, it was emotional for you in our
Yeah.
sessions. So what would you say to someone who's maybe like, I don't want to cry or I don't want to be emotional, like it's too much or overwhelming? What would you
Yeah,
just share a little bit of your experience? Like, because I know it was emotional for you a lot in the
it
session.
was. I think I cried. I mean, I have tears running down my face
I
right
know.
now just thinking about it. Um, I'm pretty sure I cried every single session we had. And to be honest with you, it was, I think, just part of grief. It's emotionally and physically draining. And a lot of the times I would walk away from our sessions and be just completely drained and exhausted. But I would get it out, with you. I would allow myself to cry and to talk about things. And I think I can see now, although it never was really fun and I had a lot of resistance towards those feelings, I can see now how it's just one of those things that you kind of there's not, I feel like for me there wasn't another way around it. Like I had to allow myself to cry. I had to be able to feel the feelings, to process the sadness, and I really needed help doing that. I was so resistant to being in pain, and I was trying to do everything I could to avoid the pain, but really that just created more pain for me, and like this pressure buildup of pain. And so I think I would kind of unload, during our coaching sessions, and it was hard. It really is. I think grieving is work, but it was work that needed to be done for me to be able to have more peace in my life. So it was definitely, work worth doing, but it's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, that was right where we started, right? Was because
Yeah.
I think you had the grief and then you were judging your grief a lot. And so
Yes.
starting with that, just loving yourself and having compassion for being right where you were, which that was a process too, for sure.
Yes, because I was angry a lot that I was sad.
Yeah.
I was angry that I just, I remember just if like a week after Jimmy died was my son's birthday, and I just wanted to feel happy at his birthday party. And I was able to like pull it together for the party, but there's other the the hard part about grief is life keeps going, even maybe when you don't want it to. And there were times when I was just wanted to be sad, but there were other times when I didn't want to bring grief along with me, and I just wanted to feel happy. And I think one of the things that I really learned through coaching is that you can feel emotions simultaneously. You can be happy at a baby shower for somebody else and also still have sadness that your baby's not there. Or so I think learning to allow the sadness to come with me and to feel, to allow it to be there, helped me to still be able to find joy in other moments too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I have one more question just from that time, and then we're going to move on.
Okay.
If you can imagine again there, when you looked forward in your life, what did you see? Like, what did you think it would look like?
Oh, this sounds so dramatic, but I couldn't see ever being happy again. I couldn't see ever feeling peace again. I couldn't see ever, yeah, I was so sad. I
Yeah.
was so sad, and I really did feel hopeless. And so it was really hard to imagine not feeling that way. It felt kind of like my life was over and I was just doomed to sadness, to forever be sad, because I couldn't imagine if that, I don't know, that's just kind of how I felt. Sorry, I'll
No,
just
that's
I'll
good.
end
No,
it at
that's
that. Yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
I think that's really honest. And that's what I remember. And I think
Yeah.
in coaching, what we talked about is just that it was okay to be there and you didn't have to believe it. And something that I love to do as a coach is to believe it for you, because
Yeah.
I'm a little bit, on the other side of some of it. And so I think just recognizing that that's part of grief. It's very self-centered and it doesn't, there wasn't a lot of hope for the future, but I saw hope for you.
Yeah, and I really needed to borrow that, like when I couldn't believe it, I think it was nice to know that you could. Although I do remember looking at you and thinking, I don't know how. I think not knowing how was kind of an act of faith too, because it was like, I just don't see how that's going to be possible.
Right.
But knowing that other people had done it, which I think actually made me kind of mad
Yeah.
sometimes, that like I don't understand how these people are functioning and I'm not. So yeah, I think you're right. There was a lot of just having to love myself where I was and just hold on to the belief that if other people can find joy again, that maybe it's possible for me too.
And I think that's a beautiful place to start, and not easy. Like it wasn't
Yeah,
easy for
no.
sure. Let me ask you, you mentioned that relationships were kind of a big deal as you moved through your grief. I'm just wondering, could you tell us a little bit about some of your relationships and what that looked like and how you navigated grief and relationships?
Well, I can think of some parts of relationships that were hard, and then maybe some that were beneficial. Like it was hard for me to it was hard for me relationship wise to see my girlfriend who I got pregnant at the same time with. She went on to have twins even months after, her twins were born in September, which like their due date was like a week from Jimmy's due date. And anytime I went to a social gathering with friends where she was there, or even when she wasn't there, people were talking about her twins. And it was hard for me I just remember that being hard on our relationship. I think it was hard for her because she was worried about making me feel sad. And it was hard for me because I had to learn again to feel happiness for her, and also that it was okay to still feel sad for me, that it was okay that her babies reminded me of my loss. So that was a relationship that was really tricky. I think the biggest thing that impacted my relationships was wanting people to understand my pain. And I think that in our culture, we're just as a culture, I just think that we're not really that great at grieving. We don't talk about it a lot. And so other people, even when they're well intentioned, I think either they don't know what to say, so they don't say anything at all, or they say things that aren't helpful, or not everybody. But there was a lot of like feeling like nobody understands this pain. Even like my own mom at times wanted me to come out of the pain before. I don't know, people want to fix your pain, I think. And so that was really hard because I didn't want to be fixed. I just wanted someone to listen. And it's hard for people to hear so much pain. And so I think that I learned to have my own back, to not have to. Coaching helped me learn that I didn't need other people to get it. I didn't need everyone to get it, I should say. I had a few key friends and my husband and people in my life who really did understand, and that was super helpful. And I knew you understood, and so I didn't need the whole world to understand. And so I think I had to learn to let go of people who didn't understand because they haven't experienced it. That was a big thing, to let go of anger from other people who maybe said things that I thought were really insensitive, or wanting people to understand. I just remember feeling really lonely.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think, like, I remember, yeah, you did have a lot of times where you wanted people to act a certain way so that you
yeah,
could feel better, which is,
right,
super disempowering. And
right.
then there were other times where they did actually act the way you wished. And then
And
it
I
was
was still
still
mad.
hard. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So
Which just goes
recognizing,
to show you that it doesn't really matter as much what other people do as, what you're thinking about, I guess.
yes, like putting those things in the circumstance line of what people
Hmm.
say, what people do, what they don't do,
Hmm.
and figuring out what you're thinking about it, I think
Yeah.
was something that we worked on a lot. And
Yeah.
I think,
Like, for instance, I remember you offering me the thought, because I think I kept coming to you with nobody understands this. Nobody understands my pain. And I remember a turning point for me was when you offered the thought, like, what if you could put that down and start believing that there's actually a lot of people that you are surrounded by people who do understand, and look for evidence of the people that you're surrounded by who really do understand, who are serving you or who have shown up for you and who have listened and who have been really kind. And I think once I was able to let go of focusing so much on all the ways I didn't feel seen, but focus on the ways people really were supporting me, that was really helpful to change that belief that what if there actually are a lot of people in your life that understand and who are there for you. And that was a big turning point and kind of taking off a brick that was weighing me down.
okay, so we're moving forward a little bit, and you found out that you were expecting again.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what that was like.
6 months after I lost Jimmy, I got pregnant again. It was really terrifying. I think for a really long time, I just kind of pretended like I wasn't pregnant. I didn't tell anyone for a long time. And then when I did tell people, I really didn't like talking. I think a lot of people, especially people who maybe have a harder time talking about grief, were kind of like relieved, like, oh, good, she has another baby and we can talk about this new baby now. We can focus on something happy because the new baby should be happy. I felt guilt a lot talking about the new pregnancy, and it felt like, I think again, then I had to process feelings. Like, I remember feeling like everybody thinks I'm healed now because I have this new baby, but I'm still sad about Jimmy's death. So yeah, again, like a lot of being in other people's heads, but kind of reassuring myself that it's okay to, I had to learn to be happy, to be okay with having joy for the new pregnancy, and realizing that that didn't cancel out my loss, or it didn't take away my sadness. I think I actually thought at the beginning, oh, I should get pregnant right away because then I won't be as sad. And but then I found out that wasn't going to be true.
Yeah.
Before I got pregnant, I realized that won't actually work. And so once I did get pregnant again, I think just having to learn to allow both emotions, to allow like fear when I would go back to the doctor's office. There was a lot of anxiety, especially until I could, like, once I could feel the baby, it was easier. But there was a lot of anxiety and thoughts of like, what if the baby's dead and I don't know it again? Or, what am I going to do if I go in and
Yeah.
just a lot of those fear thoughts that kind of like my brain thought were protective. So learning that fear it was not protective, that not connecting to the new pregnancy wasn't going to prevent sadness if I lost this, the second pregnancy. That learning that it was okay to connect with that baby, who is now born, and his name is Tommy, and he's adorable. I love him so much. But learning that I'm not connecting with Tommy while I was pregnant, in some way in my mind felt like if I just pretend like I'm not pregnant, or if I don't talk about it, or I don't, like, I had a hard time. I didn't want to have a baby shower. I had a hard time celebrating this pregnancy, because it felt like if I put up the crib, or if I get the nursery ready, or if I have a baby shower and then he dies, it'll be so much harder. But in reality, it would have been hard either way. So I think there was a lot of fear and kind of having to I think coaching just helped me to give a little bit more equal airtime to what if everything goes right? I think I was so focused on everything going wrong again that I think coaching really helped me allow myself to feel joy and also bring the fear along, because to be honest, it didn't really go away all the way, but
Yeah. And I think I love how you've described it, because as you're talking, you're just explaining a lot of the tools that we use in coaching. And I think it is more about managing the anxiety instead
yeah,
of, and like doing those things, which does take more work than a pregnancy that isn't after a loss. You
right,
just have to keep reminding yourself and telling yourself, like, it's possible this could turn out, and it's okay that I'm scared before the doctor's appointment,
right.
and all of that. So yeah, I love all the tools that you mentioned there are so good for that. I just have a couple more questions. Tell us something that you are really proud of yourself for that you've been able to do in the last year.
Okay, here's an example. I delivered Jimmy vaginally, and we got to hold his perfect little body, and I feel really grateful for being able to have those moments with him in the hospital. And we decided to bury him. We had just a teeny little 10-person funeral because of COVID. But the morning of the funeral, I actually had like a anxiety attack, mental breakdown, where like I didn't want to go to the funeral. I just couldn't do it. It felt like I was facing a reality that was just too painful. It was just, I couldn't believe that this was my life, that I was going to bury my son. I literally couldn't get out of bed. I was hyperventilating. I was just having a full-on anxiety attack, you know, an hour before we were supposed to be at the cemetery. My mom came and got me and fed me and kind of got me dressed and convinced me to go. And it was really, really hard. And for a really long time, I didn't want to go back to the cemetery. I think I viewed the funeral as such a horrible, painful thing, that I just associated the cemetery. I had friends who like had offered to, I'd love to go visit his grave with you sometime. And I was just like, no, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to, because going back was like this reality that your child is buried here. You had a baby that died. And just thinking that and being there staring at, the grave was too hard. So I think one of the things that through coaching over the past year that I feel proud of is I was able to go. I'm able to go back now and it not be that difficult. I think like before it was like just the way I can describe is it felt like going to the grave felt like jumping into a raging ocean, like it was just like I cannot do that. I can't do that. It's dangerous, it's scary, it's sad. I can't be there. I'm able to go now, and I guess I just feel in control of it's not like I go now and I'm all happy. I still feel sadness, but I think I feel more love now when I go. Just I'm able to feel love for my baby instead of this terrorizing fear of the pain. I'm not so afraid of the pain anymore. That's one thing that I just really couldn't do at the beginning, and that I can do now is I can go and allow the sadness and not have it like completely wreck my whole day. If that
Yeah,
makes
totally.
sense.
Yeah. And I remember, I think something that helped, I mean, maybe you could tell me, but something that we talked a lot about was that you didn't have to go to the cemetery. I think it was another place where you were judging
Yes.
your grief, was like, well,
Yes.
if I was a good mom, or if I was this or whatever, then I would want to go there. But
Right.
just recognizing it's okay that you hated going there.
Yes.
I think is like a first step in that process.
Yes. Yes. Allowed me to not resist feeling it some more because I think I had the resistance of feeling the pain, but then on top of it, all of that judgment, like you were talking about, like judging that, worrying about what other people thought of me when I was like, no, I don't want to go to the grave, or, and then judging myself, like what kind of mother doesn't want to go, to her own child's funeral or to visit the gravesite. Yeah. So I think, yes, coaching definitely helped me. Honestly, I think the biggest thing from coaching was to just learning to be kind to myself and to be patient in the grieving process. And you were so good and so gentle with me and teaching me that that was okay. And that was I think that was so vital in allowing me to let go of maybe some dirty pain so I could just feel the clean pain of just being sad that he had died, instead of sadness and anger and judgment and resentment and all the other emotions that I was having. I think being able to let go of those just allowed me to then walk through the grief instead of continually just hitting a wall.
That's beautiful. Well, will you tell us? I mean, can you describe your life now? And I'm not saying like, oh, no, I'm sure everything's not perfect.
Right.
But as we're just providing this, just like a vision of what it looks like for someone who might be in that place where they can't see what the future looks like,
Yeah.
tell me. I mean, you just went to Disneyland. You've got a new baby. I mean,
Yeah.
what is your life kind of like now?
I am very blessed. I have a really supportive husband. I have wonderful babies here on earth as well. I have joy again. I really do. I have joy again. I think I don't remember if you were the one that told me this analogy or I found it on an grief Instagram account, but it really does feel like I think the best way to describe it to people is in the beginnings of grief, it just felt like I was in a stormy sea and I was just getting, constantly hit by these gigantic waves. And I just felt like I was drowning. I couldn't stop it. And, just constantly getting covered in these waves of sadness and getting beat up. Like I had said, it felt like grief was trying to swallow me, like it was trying to kill me. And now now I think I can say that the water feels relatively calm. I'm still in the water. I still think about my baby every day, but I've learned to allow space for sadness. And so now, when waves come, which they still come, in fact, I can feel the pull of, in about a week and a half is when he would have been 1 years old if he had been born full term. And I can kind of feel like it's almost like grief sort of pulls you in and says, we're going to be sad again today. And now, instead of fighting it and wanting to run away, I can feel, I almost kind of look at it now as the sadness is because of love. The sadness is because I love my son. And so I'm not afraid of waves when they come now. I'm much better at just allowing myself to cry when I need to cry. I'm much better at, it's not debilitating anymore like it was before. Life is a lot it's a lot easier now to process the sadness, but I also have more joy when I think about my baby now. And when I think about myself, I think I have a lot of more love for myself and for a lot more compassion for how hard it was and what I was able to do. And it's definitely much easier now. And life is joyful now. So yeah, I think that's what I would say. I do remember you telling me in the beginning and I think you were meaning for it to be, helpful to allow myself to give myself permission for, I think you said, what if I tell you that it's okay, this is going to be hard, for at least a year. Like everything is just going to be hard. And I remember thinking like, no,
I
like
remember that too.
well, that sounds horrible. I don't want it to be hard for that long. But the hard part was just having to learn how to do it, how to grieve, how to manage those relationships, how to have self-love. And it's not something that you can just be told and, your brain gets overnight. I think it really is rewiring how you think about yourself, how you think about other people, how you think about maybe traumatic things, like for me, like the gravesite or even his birth, and choosing to see things differently. And I think mostly like that self-love has just allowed me now, I don't get mad at myself when I feel sadness coming. There's just a lot more peace, I guess you could say.
And I think that's huge. Like I said, I think just how you're using all the skills and like just loving yourself. It's so beautiful. And also, I have to say, there is no timeline on grief. I think why
Right.
we were talking about that is because you were in such a hurry. Like you just
Yes.
were in such a hurry to get out of this pain,
Yes.
and it just
Yes.
wasn't serving you to think that way. And so,
Right.
but again, it's something you just have to work through. And I think that that's a beautiful message to leave with everyone today. I just have one last question. Just what would you say to someone who's thinking about coaching and whether or not it could help them?
I would 100% recommend coaching, especially, because I did therapy too. I just think coaching, especially coaching with you, with somebody who has been there, who understands and who can help you learn to process the pain and to have that kindness for yourself. I just think the coaching was, I just, I don't think I would be where I am today if I had not done it. So I would highly recommend it as a gift to yourself, as an act of kindness for yourself, because it is so hard. And like I said, I think it's really easy to feel so lonely in grief, and having a good coach who can walk you through that really helped me learn important skills, and helped me feel like I had an ally. I had a lifeboat, in my storm, which I really needed.
You're so awesome. I wish we could hug through
I
Zoom.
know. Through the screen, virtual hug.
Well, thank you so much, Whitney, for being here and for sharing. I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Are you ready for results like this? Go to smoothstonescoaching.com and you'll see a button right there to book a consult call. I can't wait to meet you.